quick note. We've got this panel, one more, then you get a break. So we know we're throwing a lot at you. Almost time to breathe. Hopefully what we're throwing at you, you're catching. Okay, let's get into it. I think actually the last panel's, curatorially, if I say so myself, the last panel is a fine segue to this, right? Because we are in a crisis of attention. The task of being unignorable, whereas we discussed earlier, the default is to ignore is everywhere. How in a world where the table stakes of marketing remains the prerequisite for attention, remains the prerequisite for driving intentions, do we do this? All right, so how do we capture that? Now, one of the things I said is everybody should feel free to disagree. I want you to know I just set this up and Pranav is about to disagree with me because he does not think attention is the table stakes of marketing. He in fact led a panel last week, 2 weeks ago, titled, Pay No Attention to Attention. I didn't in fact think anybody would disagree with me, but with each other, but let us start here.
And we had two people here who were on that panel. We had Sophia and Stephanie. So first of all, after my question yesterday, I had so many people say a variety of things to me, and then I was worried I was building a bit of a reputation. And then thanks to your passionate war cry this morning, I do feel permission to express fully, so thank you for that. So, we have to understand where this attention thing came about, right? I think it was a few years ago when Mark went to the ANAs and essentially told the industry that we're not going to put any more money in digital till we get X, Y, and Z measurement. And this industry, which traditionally has been used to reach and frequency numbers, really was flustered and tried to figure out where to get the next metric that would satisfy the world. And then they settled on this thing called attention. So my question to you is, how many of you have heard of attention? Okay. And how many of you can actually tell me how attention is measured? So if I actually had a mic, I'd drop it right now. Because if you can't even describe to me, after having heard about attention, what it actually is, then how do you think anybody paying any attention to your marketing leads to any kind of action? So the human brain is a pattern-seeking and storytelling device, right? Its entire world is constructed on memories and stories. And much like, you quoted that phenomenal Sen-Georgi quote this morning, that the human mind is not an organ of thinking. It is an organ of survival, like fang and claw. And so constructed to accept as truth only that can be used to its advantage. So the only thing, like how you feel in a moment, is an emotion. If you like me or dislike me, that is your reaction to something in the moment. The only way you actually react to something in the future, based on information that you're receiving today, which is the purpose of all advertising, by the way, is if and only if that thing goes into your long-term memory structures. And that's what brands have tried to do forever. And this attention thing is, if I may say so politely, a scam. And to give you just some common sense examples so that it doesn't get very neuroscience-y, people with ADHD, about 40% of the CEOs, high-performing CEOs in the country or elsewhere in the world, have ADHD. If attention was the driver of performance, they would not be performing. People with Alzheimer's and dementia will give you all the attention in the world. Does that lead to any action based on that information? So it is literally a scientific study as, does this variable impact behavior? And the answer is no. And all of this conversation in this industry about try everything, fail quickly, give yourself permission to fail, all of that is good. But please, think before you actually indulge in things like these attention metrics, because over the past 3 years, close to $1 billion have been traded based on companies bought and sold and metrics being purchased based on this scam. So that is what I think about attention.
Doesn't memory start with attention?
No. Memory starts with a variety of things. So if, For example, I'm looking at you right now. It is not that actually in my peripheral vision, I am not seeing how Russell and Ginny are looking at me. We are designed to observe things in a variety of ways. Attention is also measured in two formats. One is visual attention, which, by the way, is what the marketing industry considers to be attention. In the neuroscience world, when you look at ADHD research, they don't have visual attention at all as a factor. It is actually in the prefrontal cortex is where you look at whether you're paying attention to something or not, and even that does not correlate to memory and decision-making in any format. Visual attention has a 15% correlation to decision-making. The prefrontal cortex has about a 40% correlation to decision-making. Memory has an 86% correlation to future decision-making.
All right, that's an interesting moment to go to you, Russell. What's your take?
And I'll tee up Russell.
I got to follow that.
I thought I was teeing up Russell.
No.
Go ahead.
I'll tee up Russell because this $20 billion business would not have been a 20, or if it's more now.
So that's a good rate.
Fine.
What business are you talking about?
Yeah, like Russell's, like Live Nation.
I see.
This would not have been a business this big, competing with the amount of time, say, people spend on TikTok or on other mediums, compared to the time spent with you, if you were not creating long-term memories. People come to these things.
All right, it's his turn. It's his turn.
So
your take on all of this, sir.
got it. Because I'm not going to talk about the neuroscience. I'm a
That prefrontal cortex not developed.
But I think the point about memory is spot on. And look, right, it's some of the obvious things, right? Everybody remembers their first concert. We know that our fans would agree that 80% of them, actually, 100+ million people would say that going to live music events are the most memorable moments in their life. So, but that's pretty obvious. What I think becomes interesting for folks in this room, and what we talk a lot about, is how actually brands can actually play a role in those memories, which is pretty amazing to actually have these lifetime memories, and brands can play a role in that. And so, and that's everything from, it was thanks to that brand, they got me the ticket to that Harry Styles show, which I'm going to remember for the rest of my life, or it's because they curated an experience for me that is so truly important, right? That they know me.
Actually, how many people here have been to Russell's Cannes parties? Just show of hands. Is there anybody Live Nation's Cannes parties, is there anybody who does not consider them wildly memorable? I think it's an interesting place.
Thank you for that. But I want to go back, though, to
It wasn't a plug. It was an example.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Either way. But to this point of ignoring, which you kind of started with, and I actually agree with that 100%. I also think it's one of the greatest unforced errors for brands, right? Because every day, brands are trying to connect so hard, and all they're really doing, right, and we've heard about this last day and a half, they're getting in the way, getting in front of the content I want to see, the show I want to watch, the music I want to listen to. And I'll go broader than Live Nation, I'll go the live business. You've got hundreds of millions of people that have actually spent money to go to an experience that is going to be memorable for them. It's a heightened level, that'll be my neuroscience. It's a heightened level for them. And in that moment, they are actually more receptive to messages than maybe any other time. And brands have this opportunity at that moment to show up in a way that actually says, we've heard this a lot, we know our customer, we care about them. Yet, I'll use the example, it's Lollapalooza. And I want to talk to a diverse group of 20-year-olds, and I have this opportunity, they're there, and I show up like I'm at a PGA event talking to 50-year-old white guys. And you're like, what are you doing? And that's not just at our events. I see that all over the place. It's just a total unforced error, missed opportunity to take advantage of people when they are excited to actually have brands. And actually, our data tells us 96% of our fans say that brands can enhance the experience of an event.
Done right.
Done.
And so what that brings up, and there's been a lot of conversation over the last months about contextual marketing, which strikes me as something that needn't again be said, but here we are. And not being interruptive, being additive, being a facilitator of something valuable. Ginny, I want to go to you, and it's a great segue because you, well, CMO of Zappos today, you have a deep media background, right? Traditional media background, and I'm wondering from your perspective, right? And putting aside the current economic climate as if we can, when most people with discretionary income are paying to avoid our messages, right? AVOD, SVOD, of course, Netflix, that was driven by their economics, not user behavior necessarily. When our default is ignore, how's a marketer overcome the crisis of attention to drive memory?
So I'm going to ignore your question. And I'm going to talk about two other pieces, if I may. One, I'm going to add to memory because I spent 10 years at Hasbro. And if you think about your childhood memories playing with Monopoly or Play-Doh or Nerf War, those, to your point, are very powerful tools.
And Tarek spoke about that yesterday.
So
yeah.
I fully believe that. Now, on the ignoring part, I'm going to disagree.
With who?
With you two gents who are saying ignoring is what's happening. And the reason is, for me, ignoring's intentional. And as a mother of 3 daughters, I would tell you ignoring takes effort and energy. A lot. And the reason I say this, Seth, is I don't think consumers are putting that energy into ignoring us. It's apathy.
It's such a great
ether.
distinction.
They don't even perceive the messages we're telling them. The biggest conversation I have with my team is about our most fierce competition is that they don't care, that we're irrelevant, we don't have resonance, choose your word, but that they don't even know. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because I think it makes the marketing job even harder, because you have to get them to see the ether and then choose to ignore or engage. But if they don't even see it, and especially dealing with kids who are now adults in that consumer set, they don't even see this.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about ignore as an active behavior as opposed to the way I have framed it. So I wonder then, as last question to each of you before we go into the community, should we be thinking, should I, right? Because I've learned some things here. Should we be thinking about this not so much as attention, but what Byron Sharp referred to as mental availability, which seems perhaps a bit more, a more open aperture on this? And if so, is it meant to, what has the best chance of influencing people's intentions, from your perspectives? Ginny?
I think it gets to some of the fundamentals we were talking about yesterday. For me, the recipe's always different, but the ingredients are still there. It's data that turns into an insight. I'm not a believer that the data is an answer alone. I think it's that spark, that call to action to allow consumers to participate, to engage, to retell the story from their own perspective, and then choreographing where you meet them with that story based on their needs or curiosity.
So I would say, well, first of all, thanks for the correction, because I agree with you 100% on the apathy. All right. So I would focus more on when you have the attention, what do you do with it? And so that it's not happening a lot because of apathy or other reasons, so that what are the things that we could be doing better? We have that person, they're engaged, and can we do more with them? Can we actually let them know that we understand them, we care about them,